Hey space travelers, are you ready to go on discovery with me and learn about moon landing conspiracy? Or are you afraid to discover the whole truth? The moon is our partner in a journey through space. We landed on the moon in 1969. Or did we? The moon landing was a hoax. Or was it? There are many questions one can ask about this topic. But one thing is for certain, the moon exists. Or does it? If you are just as fascinated by space travel and want to find out more about many conspiracy theories that people have about space, you are welcome. If you don't want to miss any of our following videos, which will get progressively crazy as we gain momentum, you can slap that subscribe button. We already talked about the ways we could destroy the sun and ourselves. That is kind of our thing. And in this video, we're going to dive into one of the most well-known conspiracy theories in the world. But first, let's do the thing we love to do. The moon goes boom. We all love the moon, don't we? Well, I don't love the moon at all. I bet you aren't in love with it either. It just stands there and looks at us. It kinda bothers me, to be honest. So, what if we decided to blow it up? What would it take to reduce the moon to ashes? Normally, when we do this type of hypothetical situations, we go onto a crusade to find the most interesting way to destroy the celestial body. But we have a theory to discuss, so let's do it quickly. The biggest and the strongest nuclear weapon that we have, that we know of, is the Tsar bomb from the Soviet era. If we do some math that will bore you to death if explained right now, we would need about 500 billion Tsar bombs to be detonated at once, and all of them has to be put in a specific place. So, that big chunk of our partner doesn't end up causing us trouble. How feasible is the plan? Well, we have around 20,000 nuclear bombs combined. Maybe 1,000 of these might be Tsar bombs. So, this means that we need about 500 billion more nuclear bombs to accomplish this plan. It is hard to predict what would happen if the moon gets destroyed, but it won't be fun. The only positive thing might be that the floods will be less powerful. The conspiracy. Just about 5% of Americans think that the moon landing was faked. The reason varies. Some think we didn't have the technological powers to do such a mission. Some think that it would be too expensive even for the whole world, let alone the United States. And some people think we couldn't possibly land on the moon because it doesn't exist. And believe it or not, but the United States had a plan to cause a massive explosion on the surface of the moon to show their might to the Soviet Union. Thankfully, they decided to land on it instead of blowing a chunk of it out. The first man to ever walk on the moon was Neil Armstrong. Even just his name causes for concern. If you read it from back to front, eventually it spells alien. How can you argue with that? Then, we have the shadows, which seems to be all over the place, when there should be only one source of light, the sun. How can you explain that? Next are the stars. Where are the stars? Have you seen these images? And the flag? Why is it like that? Where is the wind coming from? And if you look at it for long enough, you will find something else. The most interesting part of the moon landing conspiracy is the way it is explained. Some say the moon landing was staged by Stanley Kubrick. Others say that it was animated. Of course, this is called the conspiracy theory, for a reason. The main way to debunk this conspiracy theory is to point out how hard the faking of such an event would be. We've heard of the following phrases. It would have been harder to fake the set of moon landing than actually going to the moon, or something close to that. That doesn't make much sense though. Both making a fan moon stage and going to the moon are connected to technological development. If one can be achieved, it would be funny to suggest that others can be. But this is me, just warming up. Let's say that we had technology advancement enough to do both, the moon landing and the fake of the moon landing. Why would the government decide to fake the moon landing instead of doing it? Let's assume for a minute that a moon landing was indeed fake. Why would the government do that? There are a few reasons, but the most obvious one is the space race. The Soviet Union was the first to send a satellite into orbit. Then they managed to send a man into orbit as well. NASA was created just a year later. So while the commies were flying in space, the United States didn't even have a space agency. So this would be a big enough reason for the United States to go as far as to fake the moon landing. When they started and realized there was no way they could reach the moon in the next few decades, that's when they decided to fake the moon landing. The best visual director at the time was called, and thousands of people were involved in making one of the biggest conspiracies in history of the world. This seems plausible, since faking it would cost significantly less than going to the moon. But one of the biggest, the most interesting, and the key of all things is the following statement. If the moon landing was faked, over 400,000 people had to be part of this conspiracy. Therefore, there is no chance it was faked. This is when the fun begins. At face value, thinking that 400,000 people can keep the conspiracy as big as the moon landing hoax seems stupid. But you have to think a bit more. And for us to get more proper context, we need to talk about World War II. No conspiracy theory can be discussed without mentioning World War II. But hey, what can you do? So, the reason World War II is important for us is to prove the conspiracy is the deciding factor in the ending of this war. The Second Great War ended with 2 atomic bombs being dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. It took 4 years to develop the atomic bomb. In 1941, when they first got together and discussed the idea of a nuclear bomb, the best scientists in the world only had some drawings and fantasies about the bomb. 4 years later, they had developed, tested, and used the most devastating weapon ever made. During the development process, it was called the Manhattan Project. It was highly classified. Anybody who worked on it had to keep their mouth extremely shut. The whole town or two was created to cover up the secret buildings and factories. At the peak of development, over 120,000 people worked on it. So, 120,000 people had to be in on it for the Manhattan Project to conclude without getting leaked. That's not nearly as much as 400,000. But hang in there for a minute. 120,000 people worked on it at the peak of its development. That doesn't mean that only that many people worked on it. If we count all the people that worked in a Manhattan Project, the number goes from 120,000 to 610,000. I can confirm that 610,000 is a lot more than 400. So over 50% more people had to keep the Manhattan Project a secret. Are you intrigued enough? Well, wait just a bit more. The big argument you could say against the Manhattan Project is that we know about it. Hence, the possibility of keeping the moon landing a secret is zero. The funny thing about that is that we know about it. Best way to keep something a secret is to make everybody think it's impossible or that it's a joke. So, if we can believe that the Manhattan Project was developed in secrecy and there are no conspiracies there, then it's reasonable to assume that a moon landing, with its 400,000 contributors, could also do the same. And funny enough, The man who popularized the moon landing conspiracy was also working on a moon landing project in one of the companies that developed the rocket engines. So, at least one out of that 400,000 people gave away the secret. So, if you can take a small leap of faith, you can reasonably say that there is a big chance the moon landing was faked. It might have been for saving money. It might have been because we couldn't possibly develop the technology required to get to the moon in 11 years, since the moon landing allegedly took the place just 11 years after the founding of NASA. Or it might have been to make the Soviet Union kneel before the United States might. All of these, or some combination of these reasons, can be used to explain the motivation behind the faking of the moon landing. But, and this is a big but, this is the moment where this video takes a massive turn. We just said that there was no way the scientists could have developed the technology needed for getting to the moon. But we need to get to the World War II, from the inception of idea to using it in a practice. It took 4 years to build nuclear bomb from start to finish. We took the smartest people in the world and made them build a bomb that used the power of an atom to bring about the biggest destruction ever known to a man. That happened in 4 years. And remember, for us to get to the moon, we just need to build a rocket that had enough power to go fast. On one hand, the bomb channeling the power of essential building blocks of the universe being developed in 4 years. On the other hand, a rocket that goes fast being developed in 11 years. At the end of the day, it is up to you to decide whether you believe in this conspiracy or not. It's always fun to theorize, and that is exactly what we do on this channel. Please consider subscribing if you like this video. We will continue providing the best videos we can. Thank you for watching, and we will meet in the next video. Until then, have a beautiful day.